My name is Vincent Rossi. I'm the coordinator of the Rancho Bernardo Historical Society Speaker Series. Happy to welcome you to this month's edition of our series. Thank you very much for your attendance and support. And let me start by advising everybody to please turn off or silence your cell phones for the duration of the program.
Thank you, Vince.
You're welcome. I finally remember to do it myself before coming here, after having to remind myself a lot of times. Anyway, so please do that. And just a reminder, our next program will be April 13th, and our speaker will be Alexander Bevel, former historian for the California State Parks Department. He will be speaking on, his topic will be In Search of Calle Judeo, which was the Old Town San Diego's pioneer Jewish merchants neighborhood from the 1850s to the 1870s. Some of the first Jewish settlers lived there and had their businesses there. An area that was rediscovered by Mr. Bevel, which he will tell us about at that point in time. Our program today is the Allure of the San Dieguito River Valley, and many of you may be familiar with the valley and its wonderful natural as well as historic attractions. As a docent for a number of years at the Sykes Adobe, which is part and parcel of it, I can vouch for that. And we will have today a person who is involved in helping to preserve that historic and natural heritage of ours, and will share it with us today. Christopher Khoury is a docent at the San Dieguito River Park and a board member of the San Dieguito River Valley Conservancy, and I can salute all the Conservancy members for your role in helping to save our heritage. So without further ado, I'm happy to introduce Chris Khoury.
Thank you, Vince. And thank you to the Historic Society who has made such a great contribution to the Rancho Bernardo community. And thanks also for the Bernardo Winery for having a wonderful setting here. Before I start, I just wanted to mention a few people in the audience. Ken Khoury is my brother, and I'll talk about an experience we had as kids in a little bit. Let me introduce DeWanda, who is the administrator for the San Dieguito River Valley Park. Let me also mention Bill Toon and his wife, Sunny Black. Now, Sunny, you might recognize because she had multiple appearances on the Johnny Carson show representing the San Diego Zoo. How long ago was that? And Bill is the most important person in rescuing the California condor from great extinction. And he has now gone from large winged animals to smaller winged animals. And one of his multiple projects globally is very important conservation projects, and the hallmark of his group, Eco-Life, is to involve the local population in the conservation efforts. For example, preserving the highland forest in central Mexico for the monarch butterfly nesting sites. So, welcome. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Okay, great. Particularly with being in Rancho Bernardo, I wanted to mention a few Rancho Bernardo residents that I've worked in the past, some of whom you may know. Dave Lee was president of the Conservancy. Ramona Salisbury and her husband Max Kiltz. Does that ring a bell? Let me tell you a funny story about Ramona. Many years ago, she was given an award by the city of San Diego for her many community volunteer activities and contributions. Gloria McCall happened to be the San Diego City Council member at the time, who was very pro-development and in contrast to Ramona, who often took the other side. So they had a number of disagreements. But Gloria had to give the presentation to Ramona, and I was here at the presentation. So Gloria meant to say that Ramona was a tireless advocate for the environment. Instead, she mentioned that Ramona was a tiresome Freudian steps, retired psychiatrist. And then Dave Kreitzer recently passed away. The bridge, pedestrian bridge, is named he and his whole family have been wonderful supporters. So my talk today, a few months ago, my wife and I were brainstorming about the titles. Linda said, well, you need to come up with a good title. I do? Well, yeah, I guess you're right. So I thought about it, and I said, well, what about the allure of the San Dieguito River Valley? She thought a second. She said, you know, I like it. It's sexy, but not too sexy. So then, how to answer that question? What is the allure of the river valley that so many people, including myself, have felt? And the best way to answer it is to share with you some of my own personal experience, what I find very intriguing features of the river valley. And part of that is that this has been an incredibly successful effort over many decades to accomplish this lofty goal. Let me just mention a little bit more about myself. I've always had a sense of appreciation of nature, and I fully credit my mother for helping to develop that. Ken and I both remember our experience. We had the good fortune of being able to take family vacations often to national parks. And as an 8-year-old boy from Oklahoma, I heard about Yosemite, had no idea what was going on. We tumbled out of our car at Tunnel View, saw this incredible vista. El Capitan, I'm sure many people have been impressed with that. El Capitan on the left, Half Dome, down the valley, many waterfalls, forest down below, and I burst into tears. I just could not believe the beauty of that landscape. And I'm sure everybody here has had other somewhat similar experiences of being overpowered by the beauty of nature. The far views, majestic forest, starlit nights unencumbered by city lights, encounters with wildlife, the power of weather and storms. It can create that sense of awe. My wife and I were always drawn to our mutual appreciation for nature. And when we moved to Escondido in 1979, joining a psychiatric practice where Ken and I practiced for over 40 years, we were very excited about exploring the many natural resources in San Diego County. We really enjoyed that. But it wasn't really until I went through docent training for the San Dieguito River Park in 1994 that I developed a much fuller understanding of the special features in our area right here. The more you know about something, the more you love it. The more you love it, the more you want to do what you can, your share to try to preserve it. And consequently, I joined what I saw at that time was a very vibrant, successful organization that got things done, the San Dieguito River Valley Conservancy. And I've been on either the active board or the advisory board since then, 3 years as president. In 2007, my wife and I began the Exploring Sense of Place program. And we are now in the 16th year. It's been extraordinarily successful. It has filled up years now by word of mouth without even advertising. And it's a group limited to 25 that meets over the course of the year at various representative places along the river valley. Each excursion has its expert, botany, birds, Native American, and then go for a hike. It's the same group, and a wonderful sense of rapport develops over that period of time. In fact, we have some of the ESP participants, DeWanda, Neil and Jill in the back row. And it's been great seeing that program get better and better through the contributions of many volunteers. In the last 2 years, I've been chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the River Park, and consequently share a seat on the JPA board with 8 elected officials, including Marnie Van Wolpert, City Council member representing Rancho Bernardo. I also just wanted to put, financial support as an important way that everybody can provide some support, whatever level of interest and capacity. Well, what is it about the San Dieguito River Valley and the park? Pam Slater-Price, former supervisor, used to delight in calling it the Yosemite of San Diego County. Well, there's a little bit of hyperbole there in that. We don't have a glacier card valley. We don't have 3 of the highest 10 waterfalls in the world. Things Yosemite does not have. One is in our backyard. We can get there easy. It's available to everybody in San Diego County. Also, it encompasses an entire river valley. And I think there's kind of a sweet spot there. In fact, let me read this quote from the San Diego UT. The San Dieguito River Valley's 55-mile length is large and varied enough to capture the sense of half of the continent. Yet the river valley is small enough to be envisioned as a cohesive whole in a way that larger river systems cannot. I think it really does have a sweet spot there. When you get to be my age, you can quote yourself, so I wrote this article. In case anybody would like an excellent resource, Phil Pride wrote San Diego, an introduction to the region. It's now in its 5th edition, has been updated. Phil has been a wonderful supporter of the River Park for many years, and Professor Emeritus from San Diego State. Well, here is a map of the 11 watersheds in San Diego County that flow west into the Pacific. To the east, the San Felipe watershed that flows into the Salton Sea and, as it had occurred times in the past, would actually overflow into the Gulf of California. You see the San Dieguito watershed, 346 square miles in the middle. Let me just point out the Tijuana watershed. Only 1/4 of the Tijuana watershed lies in the United States. I want to spend a bit of time talking about the Conservancy and the River Park. The Conservancy was established in 1986. It's governed by an all-volunteer board. We have a staff of 3 full-time employees now. We've always been a lean and mean organization that has accomplished a huge amount. The roots of the Conservancy, though, really go back to the 1970s. And that's with the Lagoon Committee in Del Mar. And that's when there was a proposal being floated around to dredge the San Dieguito Lagoon and make it into a major marina. People were concerned about that. That proposal never gained a lot of support. But that early group was instrumental in getting the mitigation required from the San Onofre nuclear plant to focus most of their efforts on restoring the San Dieguito Lagoon. And that project has been ongoing now for many years and is making great progress. But, you know, this group started thinking, well, why the heck stop at the lagoon? Let's go on to Interstate 5. Let's go on, what the heck, to the Great Western Divide, all 55 miles of the river valley. And the reasons for that is that much of that was undeveloped. So there was a great opportunity to preserve it in its natural state. And of course, there was a great opportunity for it to be developed. So they came up with this magnificent vision of creating a regional park throughout the 55-mile course of the river, and have it connected with this vision of the Coast to Crest Trail, the signature project, as well as many auxiliary trails. Perhaps the most significant effort of the Conservancy in the early years was to lobby for the establishment of the San Dieguito River Park itself, which is a government entity. It's charged with managing the river park. It now has 8 full-time rangers and coordinates with the Conservancy in a variety of educational, historic programs. It's a wonderful collaboration. In fact, in 2010, Dick Boberts, who was the executive director of the River Park then, had calculated that the River Park had obtained $160 million worth of grants since its inception. And I'm sure that figure is well over $200 million now. So any small contribution is multiplied many times forward. And you might kind of ask, well, how does that occur? The Conservancy, besides its own effort to purchase land, and has often provided seed money required for grants, usually like a 10% grant for land acquisition. And it has gotten River Park to the front of the line and has resulted in so much of the land being preserved over the years. So here is a picture of the watershed in blue, the boundaries, and then in red is the focus planning area. And that is purely a planning concept to help guide land acquisition, trail development. And the ultimate boundaries of the river park will not completely fill this out, but pretty doggone close. You might see also in Anza-Borrego State Park, the focus planning area extends out of the watershed. I'll get back to that in a minute. So here is one of my favorite slides. All the solid colors, both green and blue, represent lands that are currently in some form of protected ownership. The ones in green, prior to the year 2000, ones in blue have been acquired since the year 2000. And fortunately, this slide is out of date. There's been a lot more acquisitions on the Vulcan Mountain, and about 8,000 out of the 9,000 original acres of the Rutherford Ranch have now been purchased and preserved. The county has acquired this little parcel between the San Isabel East and West preserves, provides a corridor where the Coast to Crest Trail will go through there. Conservancy purchased that 40-acre parcel in Pamo Valley, as well as Bernardo Mountain, and a lot of the lands to the west of Lake Hodges. Let me also point out the 22,000-acre Rancho Wajito, largest remaining Mexican land grant. This was actually slated to become a state park about the same size as Cuyamaca State Park in 1970. Unfortunately, the funding fell through at the last minute, so it's in private hands, but largely undeveloped, and probably not in my lifetime, but ultimately I'm hoping that much of that will be incorporated into the river park as well. Had a question about, where is the river park and how do you get to it? This shows a map of the coast to crest of the river valley. I mentioned earlier, well, there are two big gaps at this point, an 8-mile gap, Lake Sutherland to Santa Isabel West Preserve, as well as a 5-mile gap in Clevenger Canyon. The Conservancy and the River Park last year had a campaign where we raised $2 million in 6 months to provide all the funding necessary for the planning and permitting process for these last 2 segments. Having been involved in this project for decades, by far the most challenging part is planning and permitting. It's not actually building the trail. But those funds also will provide the matching funds to get the grants to build the trail. So we are very optimistic that we'll achieve that. I'm hoping 3-4 years, maybe the Coast to Crest Trail will be fully available to everybody. Also wanted to mention in the Rancho Bernardo area, there are 2 great trails now that are coming up to their wildflower maximum. The Piedras Pintadas Trail and the Highland Valley Trail. If you haven't gone on those trails, they're magnificent this time of year. And if you want a more challenging trail, 7.5 miles up Bernardo Mountain with an elevation gain of 850 feet. Closer to the coast, a lot of activity going on. I wanted to mention just a little bit out of the slide here. There's all the grant permitting funds have been obtained for a critical 1-mile segment that includes a bridge over the Dieguito River, just a little bit downstream from Whispering Palms. And that will then lead to the Coast to Crest Trail, which will be constructed at the Polo Fields. Polo Fields, by nature of their lease, are required to build the Coast to Crest Trail at their expense. After decades of procrastination, they're finally getting around to doing it, which is great because once the El Camino Real Bridge is replaced here, it will allow undercrossing, including equestrian use for the Coast to Crest Trail, and connect to what's currently available to everybody, including undercrossing at Interstate 5 to Jimmy Durante Boulevard. There's also the funding to create a little spur trail here that will include another wonderful artistic endeavor by the Hubble family. The Coast to Crest Trail will have these 2 bookend sites. The other one already constructed up near Vulcan Mountain. For very nice views in the outlet of the river, particularly once the railroad bridge is replaced and raised. And that will allow another crossing underneath to get to Camino del Mar. Currently in progress, trail construction that connects the Grand Avenue Bridge to the trail system in Crest Canyon. Well, what is it that I find alluring? Probably most prominent is the ability to enjoy the beauty of nature and having a heightened awareness of being in the present, being focused on just wonderful sensations. And I'm not ruminating about other things. Also, when I go out on the trail, having learned a lot about it, really enriches my experience. Now, talk a bit about the geological processes, Native American cultures, past and present, plants and animals that share our home, and the opportunity to share our natural lands with others, and particularly the opportunity to bequeath this to future generations. So let me first share a few photos of places you may not have been. This is the great Western Divide on Vulcan Mountain at the headwaters of the Dieguito River, looking to the east 2,500-foot drop into San Felipe Valley. S2 goes up here. This is Whale Peak in Anza Borrego. Kind of see a little bit of greenish area. Interestingly, that's what's called a remnant pinyon pine forest. Climbed up there many years ago, Granite Peak. And then off to the left, outside the picture, the Salton Sea, which you can almost always see. And many times you can see all the way into the mountains of Arizona. Incredible vistas up there. My favorite spot at the River Valley. This is the biggest tree I've ever seen in San Diego County. This is a canyon live oak, over 300 years old, that has served as the site for the class photo for a yearly Explore in the Sense of Place program. And if you look closely, you can see all the happy faces. This is one of the many beautiful cascading waterfalls that is not now open to the public, but will be once that 8-mile gap is opened up. This is on River Park owned land, and this will be just off the Costa Crest Trail. But this area there are many beautiful granite carved gorges, very reminiscent of Yosemite. Incredible to have that finally opened up when that occurs. Lake Sutherland, many people have lived in San Diego for decades, never aware of it. This was created with the dam in 1954, kind of northeast of Ramona. The Costa Crest Trail will go along the base of Crow Mountain, of which the Conservancy bought 160 acres, 240, excuse me. And the Costa Crest Trail will proceed through here. This is a picture from the Clevenger Canyon South Trail. It's about 4 miles. The trail has about 4 miles from east of the Safari Park. Beautiful vistas of San Pasqual Valley in the background. On clear days, you can see the Pacific. Beautiful trail, as well as one on the other side, the North Trail. Anybody recognize this? Yeah, well, we're the age that we can. This is Lake Hodges when it was full. You can see Interstate 15, the Dave Kreitzer pedestrian bridge. And we will not be able to see Lake Hodges when it's full like this, probably for at least another 8 years, when the plan for the new dam is completed. At least from what I understand, they're doing some of the necessary permitting simultaneously rather than doing it sequentially. So they're hoping to speed up the planning process. This photo was taken from summit of Bernardo Mountain. Well, geology. Anybody into geology? Well, maybe we'll, a few. All right, great. Yeah. So let me tell you this story. If you want to, first of all, trick people, ask them, what is the biggest river in San Diego County? It's obviously the Ballena River. People say, what the heck are you talking about? Well, there is a grain of truth in that the Ballena River is the biggest river in San Diego County, but it is a prehistoric river. It's now completely buried under sediment in most places. The fascinating thing is that the story of the Ballena River was used as one of the very, very important lines of evidence to support plate tectonic theory, which really only became accepted in like 1960s, 1970s. So here's the story. Rhyolite is pretty common rock of volcanic origin, but the fascinating feature about it is that every place the rhyolite erupts from a volcano, it has its own unique chemical signature based on the ratios of a variety of different elements. Back in the 1900s, 19th century, 1800, geologists were aware of this. And they were very confounded by the fact that the same rhyolite was found in Sonora, Mexico, inland and coastal San Diego, and Santa Cruz Island near Santa Barbara. So they wondered, how the heck could that have occurred? How could it have been dispersed over such a long geographical area? So here we go back 150 million years. North American plate had a series of volcanoes beginning to erupt in what is now near in Mexico. And those eruptions ended up creating the rhyolite, and ultimately the Bernardo River formed. The headwaters were probably 7,000 to 8,000 feet, subject to very strong seasonal flooding that dispersed the rhyolite in these, broken up into cobbles through the entire 200-mile length of the Bernardo River. Some places it was 2 miles wide. So then what happened? The Pacific plate started tearing off more and more portions of the North American plate and started rafting northward. Here is just beginning the fracturing 20 million years ago. Here we are 12.5 million years ago, and you can see the terminal portion of the Bernardo River getting torn. Here 4 million years ago, the San Andreas Fault forming and accelerated the process of the fracturing, and that continues today. The rafting occurs at a rate of about 2 inches a year, which is, if you want a little mnemonic, about the same rate as your fingernails grow. So every time you clip your fingernails, you can think about the San Andreas Fault. And here you see portions remaining in Mexico and rafting, and finally, here we are today. So you see the original Bernardo gravels in Sonora, Mexico, inland coastal San Diego, and then Santa Cruz Island near Santa Barbara. So does anybody else other than me kind of get really gripped by that story? It's right in our backyard. Amazing. There's a picture of the delta. And for anybody who might live in Scripps Ranch, this satellite photo shows the alluvial fan of the Bernardo River that has not been formed by buried by sediment. Archaeology, another story that really gripped me. Malcolm Rogers started out as an amateur archaeologist in Escondido. He was a ranch foreman, and began digging out what is called the Harris Archaeological Site in 1919. And it's located about 2 miles downstream from Lake Hodges Dam. It's buried under sediment, so future archaeologists have an opportunity to dig it with more sophisticated tools at some point and technology at some point in the future. What really gripped me, and this is only a few miles from my home, was that this was considered one of the 3 most significant archaeological sites in the whole Western Hemisphere. And why was that? It documented the earliest settlement of Native Americans and 3 distinct cultures. So the oldest, the San Dieguito complex, was characterized by very large projectiles that were used on spears to hunt megafauna. So at that time, there were much different wildlife, giant sloths, saber-toothed tigers, possibly mammoths. And then beginning about 8,000 years ago, the La Jolla phase had a very different culture, and they utilized a lot of the marine resources around. They had boats, they fished, and created fishing hooks. It was called the La Jolla phase because most of the archaeological sites were on the coast. And they utilized over 20 different types of shellfish. Imagine it was a lot easier to chase down an abalone than a rabbit. Great resource for them. This is the only phase where burial sites occurred. And in some of the burial sites on the San Diego coastline, there's obsidian, which was great for making projectile points, from Sonora, Mexico, and the Tucson area. And similarly, some of the burial sites in those locations had seashells from La Jolla. So, you know, thousands of years ago, there was a very active trading system going on. Khoury phase began about 2,000 years ago. The climate progressively became drier, and the Khoury's imported technologies that were developed in desert regions. Most notably pottery, bows and arrows, and perhaps most important, acorn processing that allowed a very stable food source throughout the year. When the Padres came in 1769, it was estimated that there were about 40,000 Khoury's in San Diego County. 50 years later, the population had dropped 90%, 4,000. And unfortunately, tragically, this was very typical of what happened to most Native American populations after contact with Europeans. Here's the San Bernardo style of painted rocks and Beggars Pintadas Trail, you know, not too far from here. Everybody can see that with their binoculars. You can't get up and put your fingerprints on it. It has to be protected for future generations. Botany. Most people are not aware of this superlative, and that is San Diego is a biological diversity hotspot. It has the most plant species of any county in San Diego. And why is that? Well, we have a very diverse topography and rainfall differences. Over 2,000 plant species in San Diego County. And why is that? Well, here is a diagram showing the various vegetation communities as you proceed from coast to the Pacific Crest and then down into Anza Borrego. Let me just point out too, the remnant conifer forest, beautiful incense pines also, huge oak pines all from Vulcan Mountain. And then throughout the riparian systems, the gallery forest, very, very important biological resource with coast live oaks, willows, cottonwoods. Now this looks like a topographical map, but it's not. It's actually showing the rainfall averages. So San Diego at the airport, approximately 10 inches a year. Del Mar, about 12. Lake Hodges and Rancho Bernardo, about 16. Ramona, 20, and then up Vulcan Mountain, more than 30 inches a year. And then here you see the very steep decline in rainfall because of the rain shadow on Vulcan Mountain. And then Borrego Springs gets about 5 inches a year. But each of these areas has its own unique fauna and flora associated with it. So this shows what all of us know. One, the rainfall is very seasonal. We have our dry season, our wet season, but it's also very, very, very variable, meaning that we have very wet seasons, we have very dry seasons, often very dry seasons for a long period of time. This is a picture I took in March of 2008 after the devastating Witch Creek fires. You can see on the opposite side of Lake Hodges, the dam here, the chaparral here is just beginning to make a comeback. But on this side, this was the most incredible display of wildflowers anybody had ever seen, ever, period. The orange, primarily the poppies, the purple, Perry's Facilia, primarily, and others. So, last year was pretty good, this year is going to be pretty good, but, after the fires, it, led to this incredible display. So out of, tragedy, some beauty can occur too. Birds. Let me quote from the San Diego Audubon Society. I'll try to capture a sense of their enthusiasm. San Diego County boasts the biggest bird list of any county or any area of equal size in the U.S. Over 520 species across the county. Exclamation mark. So, is anybody a birder here? All right, so you know what that enthusiasm. Don't get between a birder and a sighting. You'll be I was also drawn when I learned that Lake Hodges is recognized as a globally important birding area.
Really?
Yeah.
Without the water?
Well, I think once you get the designation, it's not taking place. No, don't bring up complicated facts. Okay, can anybody identify these birds? Okay, I think we have an astute audience that doesn't want to brag about their ability to identify. This and the next 4 photos were taken by a good friend of mine, Chris Gilbert, cardiologist I've known for many years. Amateur photographer. These were taken at an undisclosed location in San Diego County. And he had a telephoto lens with rapid shutter capacity. So we just saw a flurry of activity. And he wasn't quite sure what happened until he looked at the photos. This is the series of photos that he captured. So here you see a red-tailed hawk, which is huge, but looks tiny in comparison, of course, to the bald eagle. The red-tailed hawk is approaching. I don't think the bald eagle is very happy with that. Then at the last minute, the red-tailed hawk veers off and then clips the wing of the bald eagle. And this reminded me of an encounter I had many years ago, very important. I was jogging on the Costa Crest Trail at the base of Bernardo Mountain. Late afternoon, my shadow was projecting long distance in front of me. And all of a sudden, I was overtaken by this shadow. And, it was a clear day. I thought it had to be an airplane. So I looked up, and literally like 2 feet above me, a golden eagle shot by me. I wondered, what the heck is that about? And then red-tailed hawk was harassing him. And I presume the golden eagle thought that a smelly jogger might get rid of the red-tailed hawk. But, as with Chris Gilbert, my buddy, this was one of the magical encounters with wildlife. And having open space, the river park, makes that available to everybody. So it's wonderful to, preserve that for us as well as future generations. So let me close with 2 quotes. One of my favorite quotes, Jonas Salk, who said, "We have no greater responsibility than to strive to become good ancestors." And I've always been drawn to that, thinking about how our behavior now will impact others. And people, I'm sure in this room, very sensitive to history, are very much aware of that. And Jonas Salk certainly practiced that himself. He was asked why he didn't patent the polio vaccine. And he said, the vaccine should not be owned by one person, it's owned by mankind. And he could have become a billionaire, literally in today's dollars, that he forego. Finally, closing, Logan Jenkins, some of you may remember, long-standing columnist for the Union Tribune, wrote a historic centennial review of San Diego North County. The last day of the last century, December 31st, 1991. And after he reviewed the history of the preceding 100 years, I can't believe this, almost a quarter of a century ago that he wrote this, he said, he speculated what a future journalist might have to say about what happened in the 21st century. And he said, at the close of the next century, the San Dieguito River Park, an ambitious conservation project stretching from Del Mar to Vulcan Mountain, may be considered North County's noblest achievement, where great grandchildren will judge us for what we save, not what we sell. Other than Lake Hodges losing its designation.
Who owns the polo grounds?
It's owned by the city of San Diego. It's leased to, it's one of the many leasees that own the property. I think the lease was 30 or 40 year lease that was signed in 2007.
To what group?
Well, the group that managed, I think it's Surf Club, is the entity that manages the polo grounds. Board?
Have they been releasing the water from Lake Hodges into the river valley in the last few months?
Has there been a lot of water release?
Yes, into the valley?
Yes.
It's too low to divert to El Forest?
If people are interested, there's quite a story that I was able to uncover. After heavy rains, the Lake Hodges has limited ability to release water. And they release it through the base of the dam, but after heavy rains, often the inflow in the reservoir is greater than can be released for a period of time. So even after rains, they keep draining it. Currently, with the Lake Hodges dam was, all the dams were required to undergo engineering review when the Oroville dam a number of years ago had some significant damage to the spillway. At any rate, the Lake Hodges dam, which was built in 2018, was judged the worst shape of all the categories.
1918.
What did I say?
You said 2018.
Oh, thank you for correcting me. I did that just so you could get Yeah, 1918, thank you. So over 100 years old. They did go ahead and repair somewhat, well, the damage that they could, but with their analysis, they created a risk assessment based on what would happen in the event of an earthquake 7.0 or greater. And they came up with a variety of different scenarios based on levels. And with that risk analysis, they decided the highest they could go was a level of 280 feet above sea level. Spillway is 315, so way below. It was at 290 for a long time, and that allowed transfer of water between Lake Hodges and the Livenheim Dam. But that's no longer possible because the pipes are exposed. So, unfortunately, the dam is not going to be, it will hopefully be replaced. That's currently the plan. Maybe the earliest 8 years. They are doing their analysis, permitting, trying to accelerate that time frame the best they can, rather than doing the analysis in sequential form. They're doing some of it simultaneously. They've already completed the analysis that looked at the bedrock where they're putting the new dam about 100 feet downstream from the present dam, and the bedrock looks great, so there's no problem with that. So at least for another 8 years, Lake Hodges will be kept at about the same level as it is.
Have they started on the new dam?
Well, they started some of the analysis, but the actual construction of the dam is still a number of years away. But they, again, the most arduous process is planning and permitting major projects like that. Any other questions or thoughts?
Contacting the Conservancy to find more information, and could we see the slide for the access points again, please?
Okay, sure. Yeah, there are two great websites. They're easy to remember, the San Dieguito River Valley Conservancy, sdrvc.org, and then the website for the river park, San Dieguito River Park, sdrp.org.
We have the interactive map too, which is really helpful.
Yes.
So you go on to our website, sdrp.org,
Yeah.
go to the trails tab, and there's a lot of selections for different types of maps, and you can choose the area, you can see the difficulty, the length. So it's
I want to
really-
see water.
It's a great
Yeah,
website.
and there are with the maps that tells you if there's water or not.
Yeah. So close to Rancho Bernardo, there is a parking area right near Casas de las Campañas that will access the Piedras Pintadas Trail and Bernardo Bay trails. Here, off of Highland Valley, right at the start, across from the nursery, is the trailhead for the Highland Valley trail. And that usually is my favorite time of the year to hike it. There should be some very nice wildflowers. And then near Sykes Adobe, you can use that trail to access the longest segment of the Coastal Crest Trail, which is 21 miles, either going towards the dam into Crosby, or the other way to the very end of San Squal Valley. So yeah, a number of people probably have seen the signs on Interstate 15, San Dieguito River Valley.
Yeah.
What the heck is that about? But this is one of the many access points along the whole.
Can we mention that Sykes has the tours available on Sunday? I think they said
Please
that. So
elaborate on that.
on Sundays between, I think it's 11 and 1, anyone can go tour Sykes. There's docents there that will tell you the history, and the history includes Rancho Bernardo. It's interesting.
So, as Vince had mentioned earlier, the river park and the Conservancy, its mission is to preserve not only the natural landscape, but also the historic features of the river park as well. And Sykes Adobe is a great
Sunday.
Yeah, every Sunday.
Tomorrow,
Yep.
Sunday.
Every Sunday. So there'll be, the docents change, so you'll get a different story. What docent is there.
Thanks very much.
Okay.